Sorry, I'm finding new equipment here. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. As we mentioned, we're starting with our guests. So our guests, we have two guests who are joining us virtually. We have Rain Paulson, who is the Food and Agriculture Organization's Director of Office of Emergencies and Resilience. He's joining us, if I'm not mistaken, from Rome. Also joining us from Rome is Jean-Martin Bauer, who is WFP's Director of Food Security and Nutrition Analysis Service. And we have here in person from UNICEF, we have Samir El-Hawari, who is the Acting Deputy Director of Emergency Programs. And they will brief you. I think the subject of today's briefing is a secret to no one. They will brief you on the findings of the IPC report on Gaza. So let me start right away and give the floor to FAO, to Rain. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I hope you hear me well.
Yes.
Thank you. The analysis released today by the IPC is the latest acute food security and malnutrition analysis covering the Gaza Strip. It confirms the worst case scenario of famine is now occurring. Currently, famine, IPC Phase 5, exists in Gaza Governorate. And across the Gaza Strip as a whole, over 500,000 people are facing catastrophic conditions. And another just over 1 million people, some 54% of the population, are facing what's classified as emergency phase 4. By the end of September this year, September 2025, famine is projected to further expand to the governorates of Deir el-Balah and Khan Yunis. And during this period, a third of the population of the Gaza Strip, nearly 641,000 people, are expected to face catastrophic conditions, IPC Phase 5, while the number in emergency Phase 4 will likely increase to some 1.14 million people. I would also flag that conditions in the North Gaza Governorate, with an estimated population of about 120,000 people, are estimated to be as severe, if not worse, than in Gaza Governorate. But limited data prevents classification and inclusion in the report, highlighting the urgent need for access and comprehensive assessments there also. In IPC Phase 5, livelihoods have collapsed. People's lives and futures have been lost. The social safety nets and networks have been severely disrupted. Widespread malnutrition, untreated illness, collapsing health and food systems, deteriorating water, sanitation, and hygiene conditions are all resulting in extreme conditions and excess mortalities. As a reminder, classifying famine means that the most extreme category is triggered when 3 thresholds are crossed. Those are extreme food deprivation or starvation, acute malnutrition, and that starvation-related deaths have also passed the emergency threshold. The latest analysis now affirms, on the basis of reasonable evidence, that these criteria have been met. And just by way of comparison, the IPC special snapshot, which was released in October 2024, so almost a year ago and a year into the conflict, had people in catastrophic conditions numbered at some 133,000. Today, and through the projection period to the end of September, this number is estimated to reach, as I said, over 641,000 people. A few points quickly on drivers. The first driver, the key driver, of course, is conflict, the first cause of the famine. Alternating periods of escalation and limited periods of reduced intensity, as well as intensification of tensions and civil unrest, are likely to persist at least through September, the period covered in the projection for the report. Displacement and restricted access are 2 other key drivers, and my colleagues online may speak more to those points. I wanted to highlight in a bit more detail the fourth key driver, which is the collapse of food systems as outlined in the analysis. FAO has been continuously monitoring the status of food systems in Gaza, with the most recent assessment revealing that 98.5% of cropland has either been destroyed or is now inaccessible for cultivation. Livestock has been decimated, and fishing activities are banned. Much of the infrastructure essential for the flow and storage of food imports has been severely damaged or destroyed, and this in a place which was previously self-sufficient in many food commodities. The agriculture sector has been decimated and local food production halted, leaving people almost entirely dependent on food aid. Cash is critically scarce, and soaring market prices have rendered the limited food that is available unaffordable for most households. Since mid-March, access to both humanitarian and commercial supplies of food and other essential goods, including water, medicine, shelter, and fuel, has remained critically restricted. Let me just say that in terms of process, having shared some of the headline findings, that this latest IPC analysis was conducted by 50 experts from 19 organizations. It looked at the period with data and information available from the 1st of July through to the 15th of August, which was the cutoff point, analyzing both the current situation and also giving projections through the 30th of September this year. The IPC analysis for the Gaza Strip followed all 13 IPC protocols and the guiding principles that are fully articulated in the technical manuals, and it applied standard IPC quality assurance mechanisms to ensure technical rigor and neutrality of analysis. The Famine Review Committee, composed of world-leading experts in the areas of food security, livelihoods, nutrition, and health, was activated on the 4th of August and conducted an independent review to ensure that technical rigor and the neutrality of the analysis before the results that you now see online were confirmed and communicated. IPC partners have been monitoring the food security situation in the Gaza Strip with real concern since late 2023 and repeatedly warned about the catastrophic food security situation created by the conflict and its escalation. In fact, this is the 6th IPC analysis produced over the last 22 months. IPC partners have warned of famine risk in the Gaza Strip throughout 2024. And the IPC alert on the 29th of July this year already indicated an acceleration of the descent towards famine, with acute malnutrition breaching IPC Phase 5 thresholds, and the predicted scenario that has been validated today. Before handing to my colleagues for their additional complementary information and comments, let me just make one key point. This latest analysis outlines in clear detail the scale, the nature, and the magnitude of the famine unfolding. And I would simply stress and underscore that the message of the analysis that you read in the report is that we are in a race against time, that every effort must be made for immediate and decisive action to prevent further loss of life and alleviate suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me now give the floor to Jean-Martin from WFP.
Thank you. I'd like to compliment my colleague Rain by saying that since the end of 2023, various IPC analyses have talked about a risk of famine. Famine is no longer a risk in the Gaza Strip. It's become a reality in Gaza Governorate, according to this release. Now, what we have is extreme food deprivation, widespread acute malnutrition, and starvation-related deaths, and that should all make us pause. I would say that this is when a famine is confirmed, it also means that we're not just in an extreme food crisis. It means we've crossed a tipping point. We're not in a mathematical problem where we can say that X money or X $1 million or Y trucks will solve this problem. The problem becomes much more complex, especially in the case of the exponentially rising number of people facing malnutrition. I know my colleague from UNICEF will elaborate on that. IPC is the most rigorous system we have. It's consensus-based. Its classification is based on the best possible evidence. What I would like to stress is one of the recommendations from the FRC. The FRC also released a report at the same time as the IPC snapshot, according to which we need to safeguard data systems. We need to safeguard information systems in Gaza, because these are the systems that produce the evidence that we will need to understand the situation on the ground and to guide the humanitarian response. It is vital to ensure that the data keeps flowing and that we continue having information from the ground in Gaza. What we're witnessing right now is the most significant deterioration of food security conditions and nutrition conditions since the IPC began its analysis of Gaza. Since the IPC itself was created more than 20 years ago, this is only the 5th time that there's been a famine confirmation. There was a 2011 in Somalia, 2017 in South Sudan, 2020 for South Sudan again, and then in 2024 for Sudan. So this is an historic moment. We also have 2 concurrent famines, Gaza and Sudan. So to have 2 famines at the same time, that's something that's absolutely unprecedented. And what this also constitutes is the first famine that has been confirmed in the case of the Middle East. What we have in Gaza right now demands a response on a scale and urgency we have not seen before. Thank you.
To Samir from UNICEF.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Raina and Jean-Martin. As my colleagues have highlighted, the IPC's confirmation of famine conditions in Gaza Governorate and its projections of its spread really mark a tragic and devastating milestone for children. Within this humanitarian emergency in Gaza, there's a real child survival crisis. We're seeing malnutrition accelerating at a catastrophic pace, and for many, far too many children, it's already too late. We've been warning for months that the denial of humanitarian assistance would push children in Gaza to dangerous levels of food poverty. The signs were unmistakable. Children with wasted bodies, too weak to cry or to eat, babies dying of hunger and preventable disease, and parents arriving at clinics without enough food to feed their children. Today's report confirms our worst fears that children's diets have collapsed, with basic nutrition out of reach for most. The consequences are immediate, with wasting, disease, and in far too many cases, death. Last month alone, approximately 13,000 children in Gaza were identified as acutely malnourished. That's the highest monthly figure ever recorded since the beginning of the war, and it's a 6-fold increase since the beginning of this year. Nearly 1 in 4 of these children are suffering from severe acute malnutrition, which is the deadliest form of malnutrition and can result in death if not treated. Now, behind these numbers are real suffering and lives shattered. Children like 2-year-old Mariam, who my colleagues met at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, visibly exhausted, weighing less than half the average for her age, and her mother alarmed at her deterioration over the last few months. And it's important to emphasize that children are starving not because food doesn't exist, but because aid cannot reach them in time. They are additionally vulnerable as the health system is collapsing, safe water is scarce, and diseases like diarrhea and respiratory infections, which are normally mild for most children, are now life-threatening due to malnutrition. Mothers are facing impossible choices. Yesterday, my colleagues met with a mother, Atwa, in Deir el-Balah, 7 months pregnant, malnourished, with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. The 1-year-old boy is malnourished because Atwa has little ability to feed her child, let alone herself. As a result, in June and July, nearly 40% of pregnant and breastfeeding women are estimated to be acutely malnourished, with 1 in 5 babies born underweight or prematurely. Now, despite these overwhelming needs, access has remained dangerously constrained in Gaza today. The nutritious supplies that UNICEF has been able to bring in over the last few weeks, including infant formula and therapeutic food, are only enough for a few thousand people for less than 1 month. So nowhere near enough to be able to scale up and respond to the overwhelming need. We cannot let famine become a death sentence for more of Gaza's children. This is not inevitable, and as we saw during the ceasefire in February earlier this year, when access improves, lives can be saved. So what do children in Gaza need today? Well, it's simple. 1 is an immediate and sustained ceasefire, including the release of all hostages, safe and unimpeded humanitarian access for the delivery of multi-sector humanitarian aid and services, but also commercial supplies, both at scale and across all governorates, and immediate actions to ensure their protection, safety and well-being in line with their obligations under international humanitarian law. As my colleague Rain highlighted, this really is a race against time, against starvation, and every hour matters. Now we must collectively act to protect the youngest victims of this conflict. Their survival ultimately depends on the political will to immediately avert what is a man-made crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us now turn to questions. I will start with Edie. Please tell us also who you are addressing your question to.
Thank you all very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. And I have two questions, and whoever feels like answering is fine. First, does the confirmation of famine change anything? And secondly, what is the plan if Israel takes Gaza City? How can the United Nations help thousands of people who are going to be forced to flee? And has there been any discussion about this with the Israelis? Thank you.
Who would like to take this one first? Jean-Martin, go ahead.
So I will get started, and hello, Edith. I'd like to say that this declaration of famine is important because it puts a number on a problem that we've talked about for a long time. This is about the evidence that we have at hand. We've talked about a risk of famine for quite some time. Rain said that this is the sixth time there's an analysis published by the IPC during this crisis. The fact that we're now able to confirm that a famine is now taking place is significant in its own right because we're all here today. We're talking about the problem, and hopefully that will prompt action. But of course, a famine declaration is only significant insofar as it drives action. And what we hope today is that the attention of the world is once again on Gaza to support the response that's so needed.
Thank you. Rain or Samir, do you want to add something?
Maybe if I could just quickly to say that I hope those in the room and those online and different stakeholders take time not just to read the analysis, but read also the recommendations that accompany the analysis. Reference was made to some of those already, but really to the point that Jean-Martin was making, we hope that this confirmation of famine makes a change. It needs to make a change, and the recommendations for practical actions to help avoid further loss of life are listed in the report, and we really do hope there is now a greater will to act on those. That would be what I'd add. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Go ahead, Samir.
And just to emphasize that, of course, we're concerned that potential escalations of the conflicts and violence, especially in locations where famine has been declared. As the report highlights, that most people in Gaza have already been displaced multiple times. There's very little access to services in different locations, and therefore, at the moment, we should be calling for a ceasefire and for a huge scale-up of assistance, including in Gaza City and in the Gaza government, to be able to respond to the impact of the famine.
Deji?
Yes, this is Shudeju with China Central Television. Today, KOGAT released a statement denying the IPC report, said it's based on partial and unreliable sources, many of them affiliated with Hamas, and blatantly ignores the facts and the extensive humanitarian efforts led by the State of Israel and its international partners. Just curious how to respond to this. And another thing is, we obviously know there's Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. They claim they have millions of meals has been distributed. Has that been taken into consideration in this IPC report, or even at the GHF efforts, the humanitarian situation is still this bad? Thank you.
Who would like to go first? Go ahead.
Thank you. I believe my colleague Rain was very clear about how the IPC works. It's a system that's the gold standard in terms of international food security and nutrition analysis. The IBC has existed for decades now. It's a system that involves the analysis, that involved 50 analysts around a table. The analysis and the data sources were reviewed carefully by an independent group of experts. Those experts are well known in terms of their expertise for food security, livelihoods, nutrition. And they reviewed the data and independently confirmed that a famine is taking place in Gaza Governorate. This is the gold standard in terms of analysis for food security and nutrition worldwide.
All right. Can Rain or Samir, do you want to add something?
If I could, maybe just quickly to say, in complement to what was already shared by Jean-Martin, I mean, the analysis, I mentioned the period of time frame in which the analysis covered. So data and information from 1st of July through to the 15th of August from a wide range of sources, including data from COGAT. All of these things were looked at and considered in the analysis using the standard protocols that were in place. Just to signal that as we looked at the analysis and as the experts reviewed that analysis, just to take one example, the food consumption, so one of these three areas that we look at, right? So the extent to which there's extreme hunger, the proportion of households across the Gaza Strip reporting very severe hunger, according to the household hunger scale, which is one of the tools that's used across the territory, doubled just in the period May to July, and for the Gaza Governorate, tripled. In fact, at some 36%. And so, what's emerging from the analysis is the cumulative effect of 22 months. And here what we're seeing is an acceleration of a number of indicators which mean that they've broken through the thresholds for classical famine definition. And so, again, this is why the call to action is so important.
So, sorry, so all those data actually has already take GHF into consideration. Is that correct?
Data from GHF was considered.
Yes.
Namo Abdullah with Rudao. I have two questions. So Israel often says that we cannot rely on data that comes out of Gaza. How can we be sure under such catastrophic conditions that you described? How can you get reliable data? And it says that most of the data comes from Hamas-run organizations. My second question is, does the report make any concrete and unequivocal recommendations for the permanent members of the Security Council, especially the United States? Thank you.
Okay. Who would like to go first?
I mean, maybe if I just kick off on the issue of the data sources. I mean, I touched on this a little bit, but again, there's a variety of data sources that are used. Some of this is through interviews that are conducted using a mechanism called CATI. Some of this is coming from assessments that are being done by partners on the ground, physically measuring the circumference of upper arms of malnourished or children suspected to be malnourished. Some of it comes from other information analysis from operational partners, as wide a variety of sources as possible, precisely to be able to triangulate. But again, it followed all of our standard IPC protocols for analysis. And as Jean-Martin said, these protocols and the process around IPC analysis is the gold standard for determining the nature and scope and scale of acute food insecurity globally. To my understanding, just on this final question, There are no specific recommendations that target Security Council members in particular. There are recommendations to stakeholders generally applicable to both political and operational actors.
Very good. Yes, please go ahead.
Maybe just on the point on the reliability of data, and maybe just to give a sense of what UNICEF has been able to collect. I mean, we have dozens of staff on the ground in Gaza. We're working with partners. We have 170 nutrition points where we carry out the screening of children. In July, we screened 139,000 children under 5 out of 290,000 in total, and that's where we have the data of the estimated 13,000 children that are malnourished. So just to give a sense of how we're able to collect the data.
Very good. Let me go to Evelyn, and then we'll go online. We have a question online.
Hi.
Go, Evelyn.
Hello, Evelyn Leopold, Jack Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. You've gone through a great length to prove how your research is done carefully and the concepts you've used for it. We have been hearing about the desperation of people in Gaza for quite a while. Is anyone besides Israel objecting to what UNICEF and others have produced?
Who could take it?
I mean, just to say, I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer who specifically is objecting to the analysis or not. Again, really the purpose of our presentation today and briefing was to make sure that you were across all of the details that came out of this rigorous analysis, what it's telling us, what the recommendations are for action, and we hope that those actions are moved upon seriously.
Online, I believe we have a question from Mike Wagenheim. Mike, can you hear us? Can you turn on your camera?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing this briefing today. Appreciate the time. Mr. Paulson said at the top, there's 3 thresholds that need to be met in order to declare a famine, and one of those is mortality rates. Now, I understand there's precedent for taking liberties with mortality rates, that if there's historical evidence, historical data to show that it's likely that it has been met, that you can assume that it has been met, even though the data might not reflect that. It seems in this case, especially since there are no numbers that I can find in the snapshot released today, I'm trying to understand how the third metric, the mortality metric, how it was decided that it's been met. The publicly released data so far is about 30 times lower than what the metric is for mortality rates in order to declare a famine. How did you arrive at the mortality rate being met at famine conditions when the public data is 30 times lower than that? Can you explain that?
Should we go to Jean-Martin or Rain or? Yeah, Jean-Martin, go ahead.
No, I'd like to reassure Mike that no liberties were taken with any data here. What happened for mortality is that there's evidence of collapsing health systems, untreated illnesses, a surge in child disease, and all that's combined with widespread malnutrition. And because of that, the report concludes that famine thresholds have been exceeded in the case of Gaza City. That's explained in a little bit more detail in the FRC reports. You've got 2 documents, the snapshot, the FRC report, and more information is available there. The key factor here is also again, the exponential increase in child malnutrition in Gaza Governorate and specifically in Gaza City. The prevalence of acute malnutrition amongst children has tripled between May and July. When you have that exponential increase, it means that there's also an exponential increase in mortality risk. So that's how the determination was made for mortality. The decision to classify Gaza governorate as a famine, as an area where famine is taking place, therefore relies on the evaluation of the food consumption indicator, which itself is the people who are below that threshold, that number's tripled between May and July, as Rain explained previously. It's the malnutrition indicator, again, the number of malnourished children, that's tripled between May and July, and that analysis of mortality, which I just explained. Thank you.
So I just want to be clear. So what you're saying is, because there's an increase in one of the metrics, it's to be assumed that there is an increase in a different metric that are supposed to be measuring two different things. I'm trying to understand more. You said mortality risk, but that third metric is not supposed to measure mortality risk. It's supposed to measure the number of deaths that are happening, God forbid, per day. So how do you go from mortality risk to saying there are certain deaths at this rate happening every day?
So Mike, the famine has been, it relies on those three indicators. The indicator we use for nutrition is mid-upper arm circumference. And it is very clear that there is a tight correlation between mid-upper arm circumference and mortality. That is undisputable, it's peer-reviewed. That's why we feel confident that that's a good indication of the problems taking place in Gaza. But again, remember, it's not just that one indicator. There's also a collapse in the health system. There's much more frequent incidents of untreated diseases, upper respiratory illnesses, diarrhea, things that can cause children who are malnourished to die. There's this surge in child disease. There's issues with WASH. So all these pathways lead a vulnerable population like children under 5 to death, unfortunately. And that's how the determination is made.
Thank you.
Very good. Let me come back to the room. I see a few more questions. Let me go to Gabriel, then here and at the back.
Hello, this is Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera English. Thank you very much for the briefing. This is probably for Rain or Jean-Martin, but I just wanted to get some, Rain, you spoke about the IPC and 50 experts, 19 organizations, but can you just explain to people, a regular audience, if you will, that doesn't follow this as closely as you guys do or that maybe we do, the interplay between the FRC and the IPC? Is it correct to say that the FRC essentially audits the findings by the IPC, so essentially they verify the IPC, or can you just explain that to a man on the street, if you will? Thank you.
Yeah,
either of you.
I'm happy to say something, and Jean-Martin may well also complement, but the role of the FRC is it's very much a validation role, right? So it's to look at the analysis and the conclusions that have been done by the experts, to see if they're reasonable, to see if they're justified, to see if they're evidence-based. So there is very much a quality control function. Important to underscore that part of the design is that the FRC is an independent grouping, right? This is also intended to reassure and ensure the robustness and the credibility of anything that then is released and communicated out of these processes. But Jean-Martin, you may want to add something to this.
No, that's absolutely right. This is all about governance, and the FRC's role is to be the quality control mechanism of any analysis of this type. Famine is very significant. It's not something that's done, that's declared or confirmed lightly, and therefore what the FRC does is assess the plausibility of the work that the analysis team has produced. So it has this vital role in the governance of the IPC to ensure that the results are robust, that the work is plausible, and that we come to the public with the best information possible.
Yeah, Nizar Aboud of Al Mayadeen Television in Beirut. My question is regarding the children who are in crisis, in malnutrition crisis. You mentioned 13,000 of them are at risk. How many of these do you expect that they cannot even survive after food reaches them? And is there any mitigation of the crisis since the bridge has been established from Cyprus into Israel?
This?
Sure. No, so I mean what the children that are diagnosed with malnutrition and severe acute malnutrition, I mean it's not just an issue of increasing the availability and access of food in the Gaza Strip. It's also about ensuring they can get the right treatment, that they can go to nutrition centers, they can get the therapeutic feeding, and also get the appropriate health care. So really what we're calling for is a real scaling up of not just one type of assistance, but really multi-sectoral assistance. You know, we need to see an increase in food, we need to see an increase in nutrition support, we need to see an increase in access to safe water for the health system and basic essential services. And without that immediate scale up, we're going to see more loss of life, and that's really what we're calling for. We have seen very modest improvements of some assistance going in, but it's clearly way below what's needed. And as I highlighted, you know, the nutrition supplies that UNICEF has been able to bring in over the last few weeks is enough to treat only thousands of children for one month. And therefore, in order to address the scale that we're seeing, we need to see a much larger increase of assistance, and for that we need to see really a ceasefire.
Thank you. Let me take one final question and then we will wrap up. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Minglu from China Daily. My question is more to Samir or Rain. So my question is try to understand what comes after the declaration of famine. The IPC declaration will not trigger legal or treaty obligations. And we also know that the UN right now is under very tight budget. Is there any mechanism within the UN system to follow up, to support?
Who should take this one first? Rain, do you want to take this one or?
So, I mean, maybe let me say the following: the classification of famine that was done through the IPC analysis and that was validated by the Famine Review Committee, and the recommendations for action that are listed in the report are really the mechanism for taking forward work and action in response to what's emerging from the analysis. And again, there's clearly been a continuum in both the analysis and the recommendations through the 6 different reviews that have been done by the IPC over the last 22 months. So there are also, and I would encourage everyone to take time to read the 66 some pages of the FRC report that's online in detail. It provides compelling reading in terms of the situation and context, and also around recommendations for action to different stakeholders. But really, these recommendations for action are what we're hoping to be able to move forward on. We know how to prevent famine. We know how to respond to famine once it's emerged. It requires certain things, and as Samir and Jean-Martin have both said, and as we've said clearly in the and is said clearly in the report, there's a prerequisite fundamentally, which is around a ceasefire, access that is safe and sustainable, and an ability to operate at scale. And I would say in the recommendations, you will also see that reference is made not just to what's required in terms of humanitarian action, but with the collapse of the systems that we've heard about on the health side, on the water side, on the food system side, scale and action and access from the commercial and private sector is absolutely indispensable also to reversing this situation. But again, we're in a race against time, and it's incumbent on all of us to do what we can.
Thank you so much. Let me, if no one wants to add anything else, let me thank our 3 guests. We had Rain Paulson, FAO's Director of Office of Emergency and Resilience, Jean-Martin Bauer, who is WFP's Director of Food Security and Nutrition Analysis, and with us, Samir El-Hawari, who is UNICEF's Acting Deputy Director of Emergency Programs. Thank you so much to all three of you for joining us today. Thank you for being here. If you haven't done so yet, go online. The report is there. Read it. And Daniela will be here in a few minutes to do today's noon briefing. Thank you so much.
Okay, Good afternoon. I'm not going to introduce myself again. We're going to get through it yesterday, so I'm just going to start with some notes. In a statement issued early this morning, the Secretary General said that just when it seems there are no words left to describe the living hell in Gaza, a new word has been added: famine. This is not a mystery, he said. It's a man-made disaster, a moral indictment, and a failure of humanity itself. The Secretary General noted that famine is not only about food. It's the deliberate collapse of the systems needed for human survival. He pointed out that people are starving, children are dying, and those with the duty to act are failing. The Secretary General said that as the occupying power, Israel has unequivocal obligations under international law, including the duty of ensuring food and medical supplies of the population. He stressed that we cannot allow this situation to continue with impunity. No more excuses, the Secretary General said, adding that the time for action is not tomorrow, it's now. He emphasized that we need an immediate ceasefire, the immediate release of all hostages, and full unfettered humanitarian access. There have been also several other statements on this, including from our Emergency Relief Coordinator, UN agencies, and our UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. All of those statements and material is available online. And now on the humanitarian side, our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs remind us again today that civilians are bearing the brunt of this war. As the strikes continue to intensify across the Strip, casualties are flooding hospitals' emergency departments. We and our partners continue to warn of the catastrophic consequences that the intensification of the ongoing offensive in Gaza City would have for civilians. Overnight and into today, multiple strikes were reported in the Jabalia al-Balad and An-Nazla neighborhoods. Our partners monitoring population movements in the Strip say that as a result, about 900 people reportedly left heading towards the Sheikh Radian neighborhoods and western Gaza City. Once again, we remind parties to the conflict of their obligations under international law to protect civilians, including humanitarian workers and those who cannot or choose not to move. As we have said before, those fleeing must be allowed to do safely. They must also be allowed to return if they wish to do so, as the situation allows. OCHA reiterates the urgency of ensuring people have access to aid and basic services, whether they leave or stay. Supplies must be allowed to enter Gaza through all available crossings and corridors. We and our humanitarian partners must have safe, predictable, and sustained access to deliver aid at scale to people in immense need of assistance. Our colleagues working on health remind us that nearly half of all hospitals and field hospitals are located in Gaza City and account for 40% of the total inpatient bed capacity in all of the Gaza Strip. Expansion of military operations would further cripple the collapsing healthcare system. Many medical facilities in the south are operating several times over the bed space capacity. Partners stress that access to healthcare must be immediately restored to avert more preventable deaths. And today in Japan, the Secretary General delivered remarks on the occasion of the UN Special Day at the Expo 2025. He said that the United Nations touches our lives every single day. Every day, he said, the UN provides food and assistance to more than 150 million people, supplies vaccines to 45% of the world's children, and supports elections in more than 50 countries. The Secretary General highlights the importance of the reform. He added that he launched the UN 80 initiative to help ensure that the 80th anniversary of the UN is not only a moment of reflection, but a catalyst for reform and renewal. Mr. Guterres visited some pavilions at the Expo 2025, including the UN pavilion, and he expressed his gratitude to the UN staff there and volunteers, as well as to Japan and the host country. He will be back in New York tomorrow, Saturday. And here in New York as well, this morning, Mata Pobi, the Assistant Secretary General for Africa, briefed the Security Council on the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. She noted encouraging progress in recent months, notably the signing of the peace agreement between the DRC and Rwanda, as well as the declaration of principles between the government of the DRC and the M23. She expressed appreciation for all the efforts of the United States and Qatar to bring peace to the DRC. She also noted the efforts of the East African Community, the South African Development Community, and the African Union, adding that the UN is providing support where needed. Regrettably, Mr. Pobi said, the evolution of the security situation on the ground has not matched the progress achieved on the diplomatic front. She told Council members that the number of civilian casualties has risen dramatically. Humanitarian workers are risking their lives to provide limited assistance to a population whose needs continue to grow. Conflict-related sexual violence persists amid general indifference. The forced recruitment of children continues. At this critical moment for the country and the region, Ms. Pobi said it's vital that the Security Council place its full weight behind current peace efforts and exerts its influence to ensure respect for all and compliance with Resolution 2773. All parties must live up to their commitments and obligations. She concluded that while the situation on the ground remains dire, there is every reason to hope that with the genuine engagement of the parties and the concerted support of the international community, peace for the people of the Eastern DRC is possible. And also on the Security Council yesterday afternoon, as you know, there was a briefing on the UN support mission in Libya. Hamatete, the special representative of the Secretary General for Libya and head of the mission, briefed Council members, mentioning that 26 Libyan municipalities successfully went to the polls on 16th of August in spite of some significant challenges. She called on all candidates to accept the election results as the choices made by their voters. Ms. Tete pointed out that the economic situation in Libya remains dire and the security situation in the country also remains volatile, with increasing militarization of all sides. She urged representatives of both sides to resolve their outstanding issues through dialogue and not to make demands to each other that could amount to provocation. Both remarks have been shared with you, the ones on Libya and also the ones on the DRC. And the World Health Organization and the World Meteorological Organization today published a joint report and guidance highlighting the growing global health challenges posed by extreme heat on workers. The report notes that as climate change drives more frequent and intense heat waves, many workers who are regularly exposed to dangerous heat conditions are already feeling the heat impacts of rising temperatures. WMO noted that 2024 was the hottest year on record. Daytime temperatures of more than 40 degrees Celsius and even above 50 degrees Celsius are becoming increasingly common, a clear indication that immediate action is needed to address the worsening impact of heat stress on workers worldwide. The report is available online. And I have a senior personal announcement for you. Today, the Secretary General is appointing Chalok Beyani of Zambia as the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide. He succeeds Alice Inderitu of Kenya, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for her services. The Secretary General also wishes to extend his appreciation to Virginia Gamba, former Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict, and Pramila Patan, Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence and Conflict, who have been serving as acting Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide. Ms. Patton will continue to serve as acting Special Advisor until Mr. Beyani assumes his position. Currently an Associate Professor of International Law in the Law Department of London School of Economics and Political Science, Mr. Beyani brings practical legal, diplomatic, and political experience in international law and human rights, including national constitutions and treaty making. There's more information online. And I have one last note. We have a couple of international days to flag. Today is the International Day commemorating the victims of acts of violence based on religion or belief. In his message for the day, the Secretary General says that around the world, individuals and communities face violence based on religion or beliefs, stressing that we must confront this threat head-on and stand together to build a world where diversity is celebrated and everyone can live in safety and dignity. And tomorrow is the International Day for Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its abolition. It's a day that's intended to inscribe the tragedy of the slave trade in the memory of all people. Okay, that's it from me. Do we have any questions today? Oh, I was thinking I almost thought I was getting away with this on Friday. Please, go ahead.
Hi, so it's Eric with Kyoto News, Japanese Newswire.
Thank you.
Does the SG plan any actions in response to these two concurrent famines that the IPC has raised?
What I have on the SG is what I told you that he said on his statement, okay? But I think this is just another reminder of what we have been saying here from this podium for months, that we need this conflict to stop. Okay, we need people to stop the guns, and we need unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza, with all the crossings open, and also, like he said on his statement, the unconditional release of the hostages.
Is he considering, for example, a meeting of the Security Council, calling for one?
I don't have any information on that at this point. Do we have any other further questions? No? Okay, so have a good afternoon, everyone, and not so happy, but and enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much, everyone.